right. I don't know if the stream is on. I'm pulling it up in a different browser to check. I don't see it yet. Let's see what happens if I subscribe there. There it is. All right, we're up live. I've got it at 7:30. I'll give just a minute as I get oriented to the dashboarding. All right, how's the audio? Test, test. There it is. All right, we're up live. Seems pretty good. Let's go ahead and get started. All right. Great. Pop this over here. Okay. This is the introductory episode to Let's Make a Country, the LMAC show. So the agenda for today is to get us oriented to exactly what LMAC is, the Let's Make a Country project, movement, initiative. And we'll get started by running through what it is, what LMAC isn't, the first rule of polity. That's going to be super important for us the entire time of the project and really for your whole life. And different ways that you can engage with LMAC, the content, the channel, the project as a whole, how you can get involved when you get engaged, and then we'll wrap up. I'm expecting it to take about half an hour. I'm planning for episodes of about half an hour in length. I'll do this 3 times a week. Currently, I expect that to be Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Probably it will be Monday and Wednesday evenings at 7:30 in the evening Eastern time, and Saturdays at either 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning. And there are some different show episodes planned, different formats, and we'll get there when we get there. But let's go ahead and get started with what we're doing and how you can engage it. So first, what LMAC is. LMAC is, just verbally, it's an abbreviation for Let's Make a Country, LMAC for short. Let's Make a Country is a movement to make a country that more perfectly enables human flourishing. So I got that phrase. That is a foundational phrase for the United States in order to form a more perfect union. And so that's actually an excellent way of thinking about it. The Declaration of Independence and the Constitution came about at a time in history when people were understanding their context and wanting to do this whole human endeavor in a better way that more perfectly enables human flourishing. I think that's really what they mean by a more perfect union. So what we're doing here is essentially the same thing. We want to look at our time, at our moment in history, our context, understand ourselves in light of the past thousands of years. And fundamentally, we want to understand that people aren't different from one place to another, from one time to another. There are differences, of course, but the principles of human nature are largely the same and have been for a very long time. So, while we will be doing elements of analysis on the show, this LMAC is not primarily an analytical movement. We're not trying to give, we are not trying to create analysis of, current events, the news, that kind of thing. We're actually trying to make material efforts towards the production of a new country. I hear some crickets or cicadas or something, so maybe this isn't the best time at this time of year, but we'll see what happens. Okay. So like I said, it is not primarily an analysis, it's primarily a production. This is a movement of people towards making an actual country on the earth. That said, not everybody has to engage with it that way. There are lots of ways you can engage. We'll go over that in a few minutes. So in history, people have done a lot of things really poorly and really well. The people who made the Constitution did a really great job. And in the preamble to the Constitution, they say to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, and promote the general welfare. Now, it's talking about it as a more perfect union, and then it elaborates on that as a foundation for establishing justice, domestic tranquility, common defense, and general welfare. This is really interesting for a couple of reasons, but one of them is that these are what they're talking about when they say a more perfect union. A more perfect union in their eyes does these things, probably among others. But we really want to take these to heart. These are very good principles. I've generalized that as when you have a union that has those things going on, the people can thrive or flourish. So to more perfectly promote human flourishing. They have one interesting thing in there that's very much worth noting, is that they consider it necessary to provide for the common defense. And obviously that implies aggressors. And so it's not a case where the goal of the United States is in the Constitution is to provide, to establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility. The domestic word gives that away too. Promote general welfare of all people. It's specifically saying of our people, this place, as opposed to those other people, where those other people are anyone else. Sometimes those other people will become aggressive, may become aggressive, they have become aggressive, and in which case we need to provide for common defense. You'll note that it is not an aggressive document itself. It's not for any kind of common offense, but it is in fact for common defense. Okay, so LMAC is in part an exploration of those things, of those interpretations, to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote general welfare. Those are the founding fathers' interpretation of what a more perfect union will do. So we want to, in part, explore those interpretations and others throughout history. There have been lots of different ideas about how to promote human thriving, and come to an interpretation that makes sense now, given our context and the ways in which the world has changed significantly. Technology and the ubiquity of the technology of our day not being minor. So the interpretation we come up with may not be new. That's okay. Our goal here is not to make something new. It's to make something good. Really big difference. It's okay if it... sorry, there's a fly. It's okay if there's... if the thing that we make is new, fine. If it's very old, fine. If it's motley piecing together of many things old and new over time, terrific. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so that said, let's talk a little bit about what LMAC is not. First, this is important because people in their unbridled enthusiasm will tend to make the error, an error towards extremism. We're not looking for that. We're not looking for activism aside from the activism of living a quiet life, working with your hands, being for the welfare of you and your neighbors and those around you, and making a positive impact by building good, reliable things that will help others, help yourselves, help others for many generations. That's the kind of activity we want, the kind of activism that we want. We're not looking for anything that is seeking to overthrow things or to cast things down. So, in particular, I wanted to highlight 4 distinct things that we are not looking for. We are not treason. This is not a movement with treason. Treason is the betrayal of allegiance towards one's own country, especially by committing hostile acts against it or aiding its enemies in committing such acts. That's not at all what we're about. I love America. I am really blessed to have been born a United States citizen. I'm very glad for it, and I want to make America an excellent place. By wanting to make a new country, it doesn't mean anything. It's not a tacit criticism of any other place, nor is it an implicit criticism. It's an endeavor. If you are a car enthusiast and you really love cars, you may have your favorite car, and you may want to make your own because that's I don't know, your interest or your bent. And that's really what we're doing. So it's not treason, it's not sedition. Sedition, I have these definitions here. I'm using them because I want to establish a common language. Sedition is conduct or language inciting rebellion against the authority of a state. This is not in any way inciting any kind of rebellion. This is about thinking through, thinking clearly, with lucid minds attached well to the reality of the world, and making something, building something together. It's also not insurrection. Insurrection is, the definition I have here is the act or instance of open revolt against civil authority or a constituted government. This is in no way intended to be any kind of open revolt or any kind of revolt, actually, against any authority. I would encourage everybody involved in the LMAC movement to submit appropriately to your local authorities, to all of the authorities. Pray for those who are in power over you, and earnestly wish the good of the people who are currently in whatever place they are. I don't know how long this project will take, and actually it's not even important to me that I live to see the day. Like, if I die tomorrow and 7 years from now this ends up coming to fruition, that's good enough for me. I'm largely inconsequential in the scope of the entire project, aside from being, the originator of it in action. So it's not insurrection. It's not secessionist. This is not a formal withdrawal of us as a group from any political entity, at least not right now, and not in any way that makes sense to me in the near future. It may at some point involve that, hopefully in a civil way, not in some kind of destructive way, but I'm not naive about the realities of creating a country. That said, this is not a move to immediately withdraw. We are in a planning stage looking for opportunities to create something real and good. This is also not a commercial endeavor. So it's not treason, sedition, insurrection, or a secessionist movement, but it's also not commercial. I'm not looking for anything. I'm not trying to get any meaningful personal benefit from this. There's no branding outside of the movement itself. What I am interested in doing is engaging with you towards building something that more perfectly promotes human flourishing. So this list isn't exhaustive. There may be other things that we are or aren't, but we'll get there over time. The goal of this whole section is not really to cover myself, although, obviously I do want people to understand my motivation and interests here. But really, my core interest in this section of the introduction is to promote the mindset among anybody involved in LMAC that this is a movement of stable-minded, good-hearted people to build. We're building something. A lot of times in zeal, people will be interested or become interested in tearing things down. Tearing something down is totally fine. The demolition part of a renovation project, if that's what this ends up being, a renovation project, the demolition part of that is, if necessary, totally fine. Or if just practical. I don't mind if it makes sense to tear something down. People will tend, however, to jump to the tearing down, and it's not necessarily in service to the building. That is highly, highly destructive. That creates chaos and anarchy that is, you'll see why in a minute, but it can be really, really unhealthy and detrimental to human flourishing. So, all that said, let's move on to section 4. This is a really important section. We will talk about this all the time. It will come up in literally every consideration that we have, if not explicitly, then at least implicitly. The first rule of polity. The first rule of polity is people pervert everything. People pervert everything. Pervert here specifically means like to corrupt, right? There is a tendency to think of it as like sexual perversion. It's not. It is just turning it to some other purpose or end. That itself is someone having corrupted, people having corrupted that concept. All of us have within us a tendency to become distorted in our wants and desires and wills and actions, and we will pervert something. Doesn't mean that every person will pervert everything. It means that there is nothing that won't be perverted given enough people involved in it. So that does apply to the LMAC movement, to Let's Make a Country. It applies to everything we're going to do, everything when we talk about constitutional foundations. It applies to literally everything, abuses of power, all kinds of things like that. It's not that we should try not to do that. Of course we should try not to do that. But we're not going to make something. In what we build, we will not build something that prevents that perversion. That's not actually the goal. The goal is knowing that people pervert everything. To build something robust enough to tolerate those perversions and correct for them, hopefully. You know what? I'll go back to this in a second. I'll get there in a second. So people do pervert everything. We will do that. I will do that. You will do that in your life. People around you will do that. And we just need to understand we need to be grounded in the reality of the situation. That is the nature of man. That is at least one of the natures of man. We are monsters in some way, right? All of us. We have a sin nature that will lead us to corrupt everything. Okay. At the very end, I'm going to come back to one other thing that LMAC isn't, but I don't want to do that quite yet. So, how to engage with LMAC. There are at least 4 ways that any person can engage with this content, with this movement, with this project, with this channel. First, engage with it as though it's about real people. It is. I'm a real person. You're a real person. You have real agency in a real world. And notwithstanding the ways in which we will distort our perceptions and experiences because of our feelings, because of our wounds, because of our relationships, because of our desires, notwithstanding those, we're responsible for being very present, real people in the world. We'll get to some of these topics later. I consider, for example, I consider it to be one of my responsibilities to be the artist that I am, and for my principal medium of art to be myself. That's a thing that I think is good for people in general. Interestingly, I actually don't think it's good for every person in general. Not everybody has the same bent. Some people should be a more natural and unmanaged expression of themselves for various reasons. But each person should fully be what they were made to be, what they have been, how they have been created as an expression of Him who made us. So this is about real people. Engage it as though we're about real people. One of the core principles of LMAC is that there's room in the world for lots and lots of different kinds of people. Not everybody has to be the same. Not everybody has to even be with everyone else. There are people and kinds of cultures and choices and wills and desires that I just don't want to be around, and probably lots of them that don't want to be around me. I actually know for a fact there are quite a few who don't want to be around me. And that's fine. We are not trying to make a thing that will take over everything in the whole wide world. We're not trying to make a thing that is the right answer for every single person who is wherever they are in life and history. We're just recognizing, I should say, that there is room for everyone in the world, lots of different kinds of people. And for the people who are like what this project will end up coalescing into, we're making a time and place for that. So not everyone has to be the same. Not everyone has to be with everyone else. There's a really important fundamental principle, people will call it a human right, that we'll talk about in a different episode. So feel free to engage this as an exploration of how people work and how people work in polity. That's one way to engage it. Another way to engage it is world building. If it makes you uncomfortable, or if it even doesn't, to think of it as some kind of real practical movement, then instead of that, think of it as a hypothetical movement where we're trying to create a fictional world and that's as realistic as possible, and to try out different ideas to understand what would make a country that more perfectly promotes human flourishing. That's a great way to engage this. As a matter of fact, if you've got a video game, if you've got a book you're writing, if you've got a project you're working on, and you want to use some of the notions here or notions in opposition to these, that's a terrific way to explore these concepts. If you do that, I highly encourage you to bring them back to the project, help us understand, help us to grow, help us to know about your explorations, and fold that in. Another way you can engage this is as home improvement. Maybe you want to engage in terms of understanding how to promote human flourishing in your own polity, your family, your city, your country. That's a terrific way to engage this. Understand the principles that we're talking about. Pull the ones that make sense into your existing structure. Vote for the things that you care about. Help people in the ways that grow them towards good flourishing. Absolutely engage that this way. Absolutely engage that this way. Anything good you find about in this is, it's gold that is yours to take and coin and use as you will. And then the final way I want to talk about, although there could be infinitely many more, is an establishment movement. Look, maybe you want to put your shoulder to the wheel and actually get involved in making a country. The actual work of creating a new country that is attempting to more perfectly promote human flourishing. Someday, somehow, realize that goal. That's great. That's what I'm doing. That's the way I'm engaging this personally, and I would encourage everybody who wants to do that as well. Remembering what this isn't. This is not a movement towards treason or sedition or insurrection or secessionism. It's not some kind of commercial enterprise. This is about building something solid with a clear mind rooted in reality so that we can leave something excellent for our children and our children's children. Okay, how to get involved. Go to letsmakeacountry.org. Right now, there's either nothing or almost nothing there. That's okay. Like LMAC itself, it's a work in progress. I'll give updates from time to time about major improvements, but the plan is to grow it as we go. One of the core features I plan for it to have over time is the evolving constitution of the country we're going to make. I'd like that to be publicly visible, able to be seen. I'll have requests for comments so that people can leave input, help us grow in our individual and communal wisdom and make the best thing that we can. Okay, I said that I was going to go back to one more point about what LMAC is and isn't in this case. This movement, this thing we're building, has no illusions that it is going to be the permanent solution to the woes of man. This country, whatever structure or shape it takes, isn't that kingdom. There is a kingdom coming that will do that. And the king of that kingdom will perfectly establish peace for all men of goodwill. It will be humans. It will be the final realization of what God has for us. This is not that. This is not that at all. We're making a stepping stone. We're making a point of progress towards that better country. We're sojourners briefly on this world, and we have an opportunity as we pass through to make it easier and a better place for the next sojourners and for our neighbors. We are all going towards some other country, and those of us going towards that better country know that this is not it. We're not going to make it here. We aren't going to make it here. But what we can do is be real and active and present and truthful and make something that's better. Thank you. It's been, almost exactly half an hour, so that's fantastic. I'm aiming for approximately half-hour episodes. I will stay here and look for, I don't know if there are any viewers or anything. I'm brand new to live streaming on YouTube, or let me say it this way. Well, my marketing team, just kidding. Yeah, the next episode will be Saturday. I'm planning on Saturday at, right now I'll just pick a time. Let's go Saturday at 7:30 a.m. And the Saturday episode will be probably not actually this kind of episode where it's mostly conversational. It'll be work. I'm going to try to put some development work into making the website better, getting the stream a little smoother for next time. So a half hour towards improving this experience for you all and for me. So thanks so much. Have a great evening. I really appreciate your time and attention. I hope to talk to you again.